Hi, let's talk about some everyday lessons we can learn from this week's cybersecurity news. I'm here with Ken Walsh. How you doing, Ken?
I'm good, Don. How are you?
Let's talk about the story about Microsoft DNS and the vulnerability there. Tell me what's going on there.
So there, researchers at Check Point had actually found a vulnerability in the way the Microsoft servers are doing DNS. So typically today, predominantly, we might see DNS traffic over port 53 UDP, and UDP is just one of the types of protocols we'll see on network traffic. And what they found was if they managed to...
Okay, so what can happen then?
So what can happen then if that overload occurs is if it happens, the DNS server could actually be taken out of service. And at that point, once you lose that, it starts to kind of cascade because while you might have, depending on the size of your organization, you might only have one DNS server, you might have a backup, but now you're going to see more traffic going to those other servers, so you'll start to get obviously an increase there. You might wonder, am I being DDoSed? What happened to my primary server, my secondary server? So it could possibly be a real threat to an organization.
So how would an organization protect themselves?
So the best thing they can do is to go ahead and patch the device. Microsoft did put out a patch for the Windows DNS servers.
Now, there was another interesting story about how chargers could possibly be used to overheat your phone. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so with that, researchers had come up with a way where they could take, whether it's a phone, a tablet, some kind of device, and if they have malware on that device and they place it on certain types of fast chargers, they can essentially overwrite the firmware on the fast charger. Most people might normally think, oh, my fast charger doesn't connect to the internet. What threat would there be? But if someone manages to overwrite that firmware, what they can do is then say, instead of defaulting to say 5 volts for a charge or whatever my fast charge compatible device can take, if it defaults to say 20 volts and my device can only take up to 12, then my device could potentially overheat or even components could go as far as melting or even catching fire in some circumstances, in which case now your device is destroyed.
Well, that would not be a good thing. Now, although this was only found by researchers, what are some things that the average user can do to keep this from happening to them?
One of the best things you can do is just to be knowledgeable of who the manufacturer is of your fast charger. Just buying something because it's necessarily maybe the cheapest may not always be necessarily the best deal in the long run. Now, they didn't say which manufacturers or devices were vulnerable in this case, so it might very well be the cheapest one, could very well be the best one in this case. But really just buying things from reputable manufacturers is the best thing someone can do.
And finally, there's a new phishing campaign out there. Tell me about that one.
Yeah, so in that we saw that the phishers are actually now sending email messages that will either spoof or really kind of force an email to look like it's coming from what many of us might see as a quarantined email in our corporate email accounts, where it might say something like, the following email has been quarantined but now released after analysis. And now that you see that, you might say, oh, it's safe for me to click this link. And when I click that link, you're actually directed to a site that's going to ask for credentials of some sort. Maybe it's your cloud credentials. Maybe it's your company credentials. And to add more validity to that, the spammers are actually hosting these sites on what we might view as like a valid hoster. It might be in IBM's cloud. It might be in AWS or Azure. And when someone looks at that, they might sit there and say, oh, of course this is valid. Let me input my credentials. But then obviously then they just gave up their credentials. So just being mindful of what does that link look like? Where did that email just come from? Is it a valid email? So just keeping your guard up with spam.
Well, it sounds like the attackers have gotten very clever. What other advice can we give to make sure that we don't fall for a scam like this?
So with a scam like this, obviously they're trying to make it look as legitimate as possible. So it could just be as simple as knowing at least the base of what your URL looks like, or even if they're just doing something as simple as altering where the actual redirect is to. If you just hover over the link in the email, you might actually see, hey, wait, that's not actually going to my AWS site. That's going to some other random page. So for you as the potential recipient of that, just being mindful of what those URLs are, or potentially you can always see in that quarantined email who is the actual sender of this. And if it's someone you recognize, you could always reach out to them and say, did you send me this email? Because if they say no, then it's just another easy way to see that this is spam.
Well, Ken, thanks for all that great advice. Thank you all for watching. If you want to keep up on this great advice, be sure to like and subscribe below. And if you want to explore these stories further, click on the playlist below. We'll see you next time.